मज़ीद डिस्कस करने से पहले इस वीडियो को लाइक करें, साइबेरियन को सब्सक्राइब करें और बेल आइकन को क्लिक करना मत भूलें।
Language learning in social terms target language interactions, cannot be viewed as a source of input for autonomous and internal learning mechanisms. James Landhoff is the foremost figure advocating the relevance of sociocultural theory to SLL Lev Semyonovich Vygotsky and Jean Piaget language and child development mediation and mediated learning. Language as a tool of taught learning is a mediated process. Learning is socially mediated face-to-face interaction and shared processes. Regulation, scaffolding in the zone of proximal development. How we learn self-regulation is when other regulation is when appropriate is when collaborative mental activity autonomous mental activity the process of supportive dialogue which directs the attention of the learner to key features of the environment and which prompts them through successive steps of a problem is known as the domain where learning can most productively take place is the domain of knowledge or skill where the learner is not yet capable of independent functioning, but can achieve the desired outcome. Giving relevant scaffold at help is the difference between the child's development level as determined by independent problem solving and the higher level of potential development as determined through problem solving under adult guidance or in collaboration with more capable peers. Vygotsky 1978 p.85 is the type of other regulation within the zone of proximal development, which is supposedly most helpful for the learning or appropriation of new concepts, is help has the following functions. 1. Recruiting interest in the task. 2. Simplifying the task. 3. Maintaining pursuit of the goal. 4. Marking critical features and discrepancies between what has been produced and the ideal solution. 5. Controlling frustration during problem solving. 6. Demonstrating an idealized version of the act to be performed as Donato 1994 p.41 puts it. Performance is a dialogically constituted interpsychological mechanism that promotes the novice's internalization of knowledge co-constructed in shared activity. Microgenesis, phylogenes, ontogenesis. The learning that the human race has passed through over successive generations is the learning that the individual human infant passes through in the course of its early development is the development of an individual organism, or anatomical or behavioral feature from the earliest stage to maturity, be the development or evolution of a particular group of organisms, or the evolutionary history of a group of organisms, especially as depicted in a family tree. A is phylogenes and B is ontogenes is. Learning is seen as first social, then individual. Consciousness and conceptual development are seen firstly as mental phenomena shared between individuals. Later individuals develop their own consciousness, which becomes an intra-mental phenomenon. Contextualized learning process is labeled microgenesis, which is central to sociocultural accounts of SLO. New concepts continue to be acquired through social or interactional means, private and inner speech. According to Piagetian theory of child development, children's egocentrism is when children talk apparently to and for themselves, rather than for any external conversational partners. The inability to view the world another's point of view. But for Vygotsky, private speech eventually becomes inner speech, which is a use of language to regulate internal thoughts without any external articulation. Activity theory. Individual and collaborative behavior and motivation within socio-cultural setting. Activity theory comprises a series of proposals for conceptualizing the social context within which individual learning takes place. Activity is defined in terms of socio-cultural settings in which collaborative interactions, intersubjectivity, and assisted performance occur. Idealized analysis and activity contains a subject, an object, actions, and operations. X. Language learner as the subject, the goal is the object. Actions are strategies employed. The context in which actions are carried out operational level can become routinized operations, automatic strategies. The model of human activity is dynamic as it can be reactivated at the conscious level later on with more difficult activity. Application of socio-cultural theory to second language learning. Children's early language learning arises from processes of meaning, making in collaborative activity with other members of a given culture. The concept of activity theory challenges the social and psychological aspects of language learning. The concept of microgenesis of new language forms in social interaction disputes distinctions between surface performance and underlying competence. The concept of the zone of proximal development links processes of instruction, organized learning, and naturalistic development or acquisition in a single site. Example: the similarity between Krashen's input hypothesis and the zone of proximal development is disputed by Landhoff. The input hypothesis prioritizes psycholinguistic processes, with linguistic input just ahead of the learner's current developmental stage, systematically affecting the learner's underlying second language system. I+1. CPD assumes knowledge is constructed through collaborative activity, which may or may not involve formal instruction, and is then appropriated by the learner, seen as an agent in their own development.
Private speech and self-regulation in second language discourse. Systematic relationship between the use of private speech and the degree of task difficulty. Types of private speech. 1. Repetition utterances of the teacher or other students for new lexical items or other sentences. 2. Vicarious responses responding privately to a question from the teacher, repaired or completed someone else's utterance. X. Incorrect vicarious response, then self-correction privately after hearing the teacher's utterance. 3. Manipulation is engagement in the final private construction of own second language utterance, manipulating sentence structures and building up and breaking down words. Activity theory and small group interaction. According to activity theory, the personal goals with which an individual approaches a particular task or problem may vary. The entry levels of knowledge and skills which individuals bring to a particular task will of course also vary, as well as being subject to change in the course of the task itself. In Vygotskian terms, the less expert participant can appropriate and internalize knowledge or skill which is collaboratively developed in the course of the interaction. The sociocultural theory did not focus on the individual child but on the child as a product of social interaction, especially with adults, parents, teachers. Focus on interactions, for example, child being taught by a parent how to perform some culturally specific action, rather than child by himself. Social world mediates children's cognitive development. Cognitive development occurs as child's thinking is molded by society in the form of parents, teachers, and peers. This leads to peer tutoring as a strategy in classrooms. People's thinking differs dramatically between cultures because different cultures stress different things. Theories, principles, and concepts. Children construct their knowledge. Knowledge is not transferred passively, but is personally constructed. The learning is mediated. Cognitive development is not a direct result of activity, but it is indirect. Other people must interact with the learner, use mediatory tools to facilitate the learning process, and then cognitive development may occur. Language plays a central role in mental development. The most significant sociocultural tool is language, as it is used to teach tool use and is vital in the process of developing higher psychological functions. Theories, principles, and concepts. Learning appears twice. First on the social level, and later on the individual level, first between people interpsychology, and then inside the child intrapsychology. Development cannot be separated from its social context. The context needed for learning is that where the learners can interact with each other and use the new tools. This means that the learning environment must be authentic, that is, it must contain the type of people who would use these types of tools such as concepts, language, symbols in a natural way. Theories, principles, and concepts. Zone of Proximal Development (ZPD). The difference between what a child can do independently and what the child needs help from a more knowledgeable person to do is the zone of proximal development. Theories, principles, and concepts. Zone of Proximal Development (ZPD). Distance between actual and potential knowledge. Potential knowledge. Potential. Actual knowledge. Actual. Two children with the same actual knowledge travel different distances to their potential knowledge, therefore different ZPD. Theories, principles, and concepts. Scaffolding role of teachers and others in supporting the learner's development and providing support structures to get to the next stage or level. Vygotsky. A knowledgeable participant can create by means of speech and supportive conditions in which the student novice can participate in and extend current skills and knowledge to a high level of competence. In an educational context, however, scaffolding is an instructional structure whereby the teacher models the desired learning strategy or task, then gradually shifts responsibility to the students. Scaffolding provides support, extends the range of what a learner can do, allows the learner to accomplish tasks otherwise impossible. Used only when needed. Example. An example of scaffolding in the classroom setting could include a teacher first instructing her children on how to write a sentence using commas and conjunctions. As the week goes on, she has her students practice writing these sentences with peers, give students feedback, and eventually has the kids to complete this skill without her guidance. Pigot. Vygotsky. Both agree children are active learners who actively construct knowledge. Thinking develops in recognizable stages which depend on natural maturation. Development of thinking is dependent upon language and culture. Role of teacher important but use of more, expert other not central. Use of more, expert other seen as fundamental part of cognitive development. Readiness is a central concept in education. Children need to be ready to progress in their learning. Children should be actively encouraged to move through ZPD, do not need to be ready but should be given opportunity to engage in problems which are beyond current level of ability but within ZPD. Scaffolding not a key concept. Scaffolding is a central concept. Language reflects level of cognitive development. Language helps to develop cognitive abilities. This theory was very influential in education but has need revising, and underestimation of children's abilities still a problem. This theory is still very influential in education implementation. A clear application of sociocultural theory principles in second language classroom is obvious in the task-based approach. This approach emphasizes the importance of social and collaborative aspects of learning. Sociocultural theory focuses on how the learner accomplishes a task and how the interaction between learners can scaffold and assist in the second language acquisition process. Chiruk, 2008. Recent technological advances have affected the application of socio-cultural theory in practice. Innovative interactive computer software programs allow students to synthesize the course material through active learning. Despite some minor disadvantages, this use of technology allows interaction with others that would normally be inaccessible through distance education and web-based courses. Summary: teaching and learning based on the premise that cognition is the result of mental construction. In other words, students learn by fitting new information together with what they already know. Learning is affected by the context in which an idea is taught as well as by students' beliefs and attitudes. The learner actively imposes organization and meaning on the surrounding environment and constructs knowledge in the process. The teacher's role is not only to observe and assess but to also engage with the students while they are completing activities, wondering aloud, and posing questions to the students for promotion of reasoning. Conclusion: sociocultural theory considers learning as a semiotic process where participation in socially mediated activities is essential. The theory regards instruction as crucial to cognitive development in the classroom. Instruction should be geared to the ZPD that is beyond the learner's actual development level. Social instruction actually produces new, elaborate, advanced psychological processes that are unavailable to the organism working in isolation.